this is the kind of like the vibe, the people, the like weird experimental art. Yeah, just that sense of like family. The Stud was truly the first place that I found that and like latched onto it.
That was Rachel Ryan, one member of the Stud Collective. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast all about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make this city unique. Welcome to part 1 of my episode all about the Stud. In it, you'll re-meet Season 3 guest of the show, Marke B, who is joined by fellow Stud Collective members Rachel and Honey Mahogany. They'll each tell us the story of their lives and how they made their way to the Stud. Check back next week for part 2 and hear all about the Stud's new home on Folsom in South of Market. And starting this Thursday, June 20th, the Stud will be open regular hours every day. First up, here's Marke B.
Yes, okay, well, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, that fabulous musical town, and born and raised, and went to school there, and went to college and started throwing raves to get myself through college, underground raves. I was very hooked in with the Detroit techno and other music scenes.
To get yourself through college, like you were making money on that.
Yeah, literally, that was what I did.
You said that in
right.
the first one, or I just don't remember that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, it didn't pay much, but you didn't need much to live in downtown Detroit at that time.
And if it was a school like anywhere else back then, you didn't need a lot of money to go to school.
Exactly, yeah. It was basically Wayne State University, and I was paying like $5 a credit hour, so it was like insane.
God.
Right, totally. I didn't eat any vegetables for 4 years because there weren't any in Detroit, but I lived on raves in White Castle and Coney dogs. Yes, but eventually through that, after college, after I graduated from college, I realized that there was absolutely no market for a music writer in Detroit. This was before the internet, and there were like 2 alternative weeklies and 1 newspaper, and you had to wait for someone to die to get a position at either of those. And
so you did want to write.
Yeah, I did want to write. I graduated with a degree in writing and anthropology, double major, minor in physics, and then
did that desire to write start in high school or before college?
Yeah, I was always a writer. I was pretty much always a writer. There's a lot of embarrassing juvenilia in my background that I never want on earth, that my mother keeps trying to give to me every time I go back.
The weeds. You had to go through the weeds.
Yeah. Super embarrassing love poems, etc. Yeah. And I was always gay. I was, nutty as a fruitcake from the very beginning. Fruity as a nutcake. I don't know. And from the very beginning, so that also helped with me deciding I needed to get the fuck out of Detroit. It was also the height of the AIDS crisis, and Detroit did not have very much support then for HIV positive people. So
this is after you graduated college?
This is after I graduated college, and so I was couch surfing, working odd jobs. Raves had kind of developed into something more commercial, so it wasn't really my scene anymore. And then my best friend Eric came to me one day and said, I bought us 2 train tickets. Pack your bag. We're leaving to San Francisco tomorrow. I did not want to move to San Francisco. I fucking hated hippies. I hated the beats. I hated all that crap.
Had you been here?
No, I had actually. Oh, yes. I had been here once when my parents took me when I was 14. I tried to run away to the Castro, but I got completely lost because I thought the cable cars went to the Castro, which they did not.
No.
They instead
different
went to
trains go there.
Yeah, different trains.
But did that factor in at all, or are you just like, no, now it's just a fucking place for hippies?
It was just my friend found a Amtrak ticket for $44. It was a 2.5-day journey. I did not know there was a dining car, and I thought you had to sit in your seat. So I basically lived off of 2 bags of potato chips the whole time. I was very young and naive and stupid.
Potatoes are a vegetable, so at least you're graduating that way.
A little bit. Didn't have a lot of roughage, but had a lot of carbs. And
but you said that you San Francisco was not
No, this was not the scene I imagined at all. I wanted
Was it just to get out?
Yeah, it was just to get
Just
out.
to get
I mean,
out.
I wanted to move to New York. I had already spent several summers there as a club kid. There was a much more robust publishing industry. People didn't stand for all that woo-woo crap that was going on in California, and that wasn't really my thing. But then I moved here and I immediately fell in love. It was like the minute that the train pulled in the station, you had to get on a bus in Emeryville to come across the bridge to the city. The buildings were like shining white in the sun, and I just thought, okay, this is actually a beautiful place. Nobody's trying to molest me. Like, no beat poets are poking out of the shadows trying to, like, whatever. Like, Allen Ginsberg wasn't waiting under the bed. And so,
He was busy that day.
Yeah, he was busy.
And remind folks what year that was that you came here?
1994. I moved here the day after Pride, and as soon as we got in the city, I thought, oh my God, this city is a shithole. It was the day after Pride, and it was a mess.
Yeah, right.
Like, things were a mess. There were people, like, passed out on the street. Trash everywhere. There wasn't as robust a civic infrastructure for those type of things then. But luckily I waited another year, and the next Pride I got to partake in, and I kind of found my people. So it was great. Yeah.
And then if there's a fast forward, how you found out about maybe your first visit or
I mean, one of the first things I did was the scene here was very white. The gay scene was incredibly white, incredibly kind of like mainstreamy at that time. But there were a group of us that hung out at the end up who were like people of color. We were into different kinds of music. Hip hop, house was not huge here. And the first thing I did was go to a Monday night at the Stud for hip hop night. Which immediately felt like Detroit. It felt like, okay, I found this kind of niche here. And that was basically my intro to the Stud.
How soon after you arrived was
that? Was
that?
1995, I believe.
So just the next year.
Yeah, the next year. But yeah, the Stud took about a year, but then I found that, and I just kept going to the Stud since. So yeah, it's wonderful to have this whole arc of 30 years.
Oh my God! Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that all the time with stuff in my own life, but
That's
now,
kinda crazy.
that's almost 30 years. How did you then get involved with the co-op?
Well, I mean, I do not know what blessings fell on my head or what happened, but Rachel, Ryan, and Nate Albee reached out to me to become part of this. I mean, maybe because I don't remember the exact connection, but it was perfectly something I wanted to do really bad. So me and my husband David jumped on it. And
he's a co-op member as well?
He is a co-op member as well. Yeah, totally. And we just felt so pleased and proud to be part of this giant project that has actually worked, which is also like metaphysically. I mean, now I believe in the woo-woo San Francisco. So yeah.
So time machine, you'll tell that kid. But maybe if you told yourself then, you might not have come here.
That could
right?
be true. Yeah, exactly.
It might have been the oppositional
yeah,
thing.
I mean, I was pretty rebellious. I was a little shit back then, so
Yeah.
I probably would have been like, forget it.
Right. So no time machines, everyone. No. And then what year was it that you and your husband got involved in the co-op?
Oh, so that was
Just to
2016.
16.
Yeah, 2016.
So coming up on 10 years.
Yeah, we're approaching it.
Yeah.
And so it's been a long journey, but it's been such a great family experience. I think I don't know what I would have done without it. It's kind of like one of those. I always fall into these amazing groups of people, and this just keeps going and going, and so it's just like fantastic, so so if I die here and I'm buried, I will be happy.
Okay. Okay, fair enough, when we've got that on tape. Okay, thank you, Marky. Rachel?
Yeah, so I was originally born in San Francisco, grew up in Noe Valley, went to elementary school in the Castro.
You want to name schools?
Sure.
I know that's a thing for y'all.
Live Oak.
Oh yeah.
Live Oak used to be at 18th and Diamond. My playground, the school playground, was right across the street from the Edge Bar.
Yeah.
It's now Eureka Valley Rec Center, and then Live Oak has since moved to Potrero Hill.
Oh, right.
But my kindergarten teacher is still working there.
Whoa.
He was, I know, and he was.
And that's not me calling you old.
This is just it's such a perfect kind of snapshot of like my youth was going to this very sweet, progressive kind of liberal arts private school in the Castro, where my kindergarten teacher was young and gay and had bleach-blonde hair and wore vintage Letterman jackets, and he had a Barbie collection.
Yes.
Yeah, he was definitely one of my early role models. So,
Awesome.
And then my second grade teacher was a bear.
Yes.
He had a.
You can name your teachers if you want to give them shout outs.
John Michaud, Aaron Mazria.
Okay.
But my second grade teacher had like a classroom teddy bear and a classroom golden retriever. They were both named Buster.
Wow.
And he also we did like a teddy bear tea party. There was, the ground level of the school was a senior center. And so we had a tea party every year with the seniors and the kids, where everybody brought their bears. And my bear second grade teacher was one of the people who put it together.
That is sweet.
It's a little,
really sweet.
little glimpse into the childhood of Rachel Ryan.
Okay.
So, and my family's super liberal, and I had, like gay uncle, gay teachers, a lot of exposure to the queer community as a young person. My family moved up to Marin County because I have two brothers, and paying tuition for this beautiful wonderland of a school was proved to be too much for my family to be able to maintain. But my dad was a general contractor for over 40 years. His business was right across the street from the Eagle in Soma.
Oh, yeah.
So I spent a lot of time in and around this neighborhood as a young person as well.
Okay. But how old were you, or where were you in school when y'all moved to Marin?
Still in elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I was
fairly young.
going into fourth grade. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that? I mean, it's not far, but it's different.
It's absolutely different, but in a lot of ways it was an idyllic place to spend your childhood. It was the combination of like access to nature, more freedoms than I would have had as a girl. Like with my family, my parents, again, super supportive, super progressive, open-minded, but definitely like, our little girl child must be protected. So my mom was, my older brother and his friends were all really close with my parents as well. So I had a lot of freedom if I spent time with them. Like yes, this is definitely the era that I was growing up in. We did swing dancing.
Oh.
So me and my brother and his friends were all like in swing classes.
Okay.
This is like 1999. But
yeah, around the time of that movie.
Yep,
right?
Exactly. That was
I remember
era.
that was
the
big.
moment.
That was big.
But so when we were all in high school together, I could come to San Francisco and go to like swing clubs and be out until 2:00 in the morning, as long as I was with my brother and his friends. But when they graduated and went to college, it was like a rude awakening where all of a sudden my mom was like, 10 p.m. curfew, you better be home.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
After all that freedom.
Exactly. But, I went to UC Santa Cruz, graduated, came right back to the city, and most of my family is still local. So we've got some strong roots in the Bay Area.
And you live in the city now?
I do.
Okay.
I live like 10 blocks from the house I grew up in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That deserves a congratulations, I think. I mean, that's cool. Also to be from such a great place. If I may.
Indeed. Yeah, my parents moved to Dolores Street in 1975.
Okay.
I grew up like a few blocks from there. I moved right back to that neighborhood after college, and now I'm back on Dolores Street. So.
Yes, full circle. I love it. And then your story of the stud, and it can start with maybe the first time you came here, whatever your story might be, and then getting involved.
Yeah,
in working here.
I had been to many a gay bar, and growing up, as I said, I really, I was just, had so much support and unconditional love for whatever I wanted to do. But I definitely grew up as somebody with like bisexual shame, where I was like, ooh, not gay enough to like really claim this, but immersed in the community through friends, and did have like a kind of slow start to it. I was already spending a lot of time in gay bars, but arriving at the Stud in about 2009 was the first time that I felt like, oh shit, these are my people.
Like actual home.
Yeah, like this is the kind of like the vibe, the people, the like weird experimental art. Yeah, just that sense of like family. The Stud was truly the first place that I found that and like latched onto it.
That's amazing.
And so, yeah, the Stud just kind of became like my little home away from home spot. And especially Vivienne Forevermore and Glamour's Party Something was the weekly Friday drag show that I think really defined drag at the Stud for many years after Heclina and T-Shack stopped doing their show together with the Stud. So, yeah, Friday was just like, it was the place to be.
You became a regular.
I did become a regular. And so I ended up meeting a lot of like my best friends at something at the Stud. And so when the news came, and we were already having these conversations, watching other bars close, and people get priced out, where we were like, how do we stop this from happening again? So when the previous owner, Michael McElheney, announced that he was calling it quits, wanted to retire, wanted to pass the torch, Nate Albee was definitely like, oh, we've already been talking about this. We talked about this when the Lex closed. We talked about this when Esta Noche closed. So it's time to like jump into action. So
as a group, that was the plan, or?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
But it definitely started with Nate. Nate and I having conversations, bringing Cornelius in, bringing Little John in, and then the four of us, right after the meeting that Michael hosted, we sat down and started putting together like the dream team list of like all of the people that we wanted to bring in.
Hell yeah. Were you already working at the Stud, or?
No, I was.
You were just a regular.
Yeah,
not just,
you
were a regular.
Yes, I was. No,
I
was bartending another underground party called Odyssey. I was a backup dancer doing drag and doing like a little my own drag performance. But I certainly had these feelings of I've never been that great of a bartender. I was never that great of a drag performer, but I was like, this feels like home and I want to be part of it.
It's good to know there's any limitations, right? If you're like, I want to do this thing, but I don't know if it's me.
I know.
Yeah.
But having the opportunity all of a sudden, both like the opportunity and the challenge of, holy shit, the Stud might close, this thing that means so much to us, was definitely a moment of like, oh, this is where we step in. Never imagined in my wildest dreams that I would have the keys to that castle, but yeah, I feel really honored that it worked out the way it did.
Here we are. All right. Awesome. Thank you. And now we will turn to Honey. So we discussed that you are from here, so we don't need to talk about necessarily where you're from, but, what's it like what was it like growing up here when you grew up?
Well, I did grow up in San Francisco, but my family were refugees. They came here from Ethiopia, from East Africa.
Okay.
And, I grew up on the west side of the city in the outer Sunset, right by the ocean.
Back when it was foggy.
Back when it was foggy all the time. Yeah, it is a little less foggy now. It is a little less foggy.
Yeah.
Global warming is done okay by San Francisco, except for the fire season. Yeah. But, and the super blooms, but or the super, what are they called? The algae blooms.
Yeah, those.
Otherwise we're golden.
Yeah, well, and I don't know about y'all, but my allergies.
Oh, the allergies.
Just what the fuck ever.
Crab season. Okay, see, no, we're already like getting through the list.
But you grew up in Outer Sunset, you said. Or
I grew up in the Outer Sunset, so right off of Taraval Street. I think Taraval and 43rd.
Okay.
And it's really quiet out there. Like, I think in some ways there was this like feeling growing up on the west side in the Outer Sunset, like, am I really living in San Francisco? Like, or I'd meet people from the east side of the city that'd be like, oh, that's not really San Francisco. It's really a suburb of San Francisco.
Yeah. Do I need my passport?
Yes. We have to go through this tunnel. I mean, there's this whole thing.
It's a long distance call.
Like when they thought about when they kept referencing Bridge and Tunnelers, I thought they were talking about me because you basically felt like you had to go pitch in a tunnel
that actually makes me kind of sad.
No, I'm just kidding.
And can we? You can say your age, or can we just get a decade?
I'm 40. So
90s.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in '83. I grew up in the '80s and '90s in the city. Graduated from high school in 2002. So I went to school all in the Outer Sunset and went to Catholic school specifically.
So
K through 12.
SI.
I did go to SI.
Okay.
But I even before, but I went to St. Gabriel's and then to St. Ignatius after that.
Okay.
Yeah, 13 years of Catholic school. So all that to say that, like, I felt very sheltered growing up in the Outer Sunset and going to Catholic school. Like, I think people have this idea that you grow up in San Francisco and it's all, like, hippies and queers and drag queens and, all those things. And and my life was very much like little boxes, like, I mean, and also I will say that a lot of my family who immigrated to San Francisco, we for a while all lived in the same neighborhood in the state, like within blocks of each other. So in many ways it was also a bit of an idyllic childhood in that, like, I could, like, oftentimes we'd walk to my aunt's house or my cousin's house, like my cousins who were all about the same age as me. Like, we all grew up together, although they went to Holy Name, which was the rival school for St. Gabe's.
Right.
And then my older cousins would watch us. So it felt very sheltered, but also it was quite wonderful. I didn't really actually even come out until I think after I left San Francisco, because my family was super religious. I mean, I think that they were liberal in some ways and not liberal in others, or I just was unsure. And it was a time when people didn't really regularly come out in high school back then, especially when they went to Catholic school.
You already said they're Catholic, so liberal on this
they were, like,
and not
also
on that.
Pre-Vatican II Catholic, so it was like very Catholic.
I just caught that you said you left San Francisco for a bit. College, maybe?
Yeah, I went to college.
Okay.
I went to USC for undergrad. That's when I came out, and I became really super queer. Started doing drag. Was the way
you started that in college?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, and the way that it happened too was just such, like, I feel like it was like an omen of things to come, because my friend who was in the film program at USC, I think it was his first film project, and he was like, I want you to do this role because you're the only guy that I think would look good as a girl at the time. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I did it, and, it kind of worked, and I found myself in many ways.
So you dug it.
I dug it.
Right away.
I mean, and now it's like real.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, in many ways, I think I really found myself through my move. I think it was, that whole thing of getting away from your family, and also just, like, being able to find out who you are as an individual as opposed to as part of a collective. And now I'm in a collective again.
No. Yeah.
But I think there's a little more room for individuality.
Yeah. You were there for college and then
I was there for
back,
college,
or?
And then there was this whole situation where I was outed to my family by one of my cousins, and they sent me to Ethiopia as a way to get me away from negative influences. I spent about a year there. Interned at UN AIDS, and quickly realized because I've always been involved in, I think, social justice work.
Right.
And I thought that I wanted to work in international relations and to do that thing, but quickly realized that, I felt that the UN in that area was not really serving the community that it was meant to be serving. It felt much more like a Big Brother situation, or even just sort of like this weird sort of like, we're just going to observe and, do things that we're told we can do, but we're not going to actually do things that create change or make any sort of real impact. That's how I felt at the time as an intern working on the ground.
And that was in Ethiopia?
In Ethiopia.
Okay.
So I realized that I wanted to not work in some sort of big, huge international organization, and I decided to study social work. So I came back and went to UC Berkeley to study social work. And
still wanting to do activist type work, social justice?
I wanted to be a social worker so that I could work more directly with communities. And yes, I mean, make a positive impact, but like it be, I think, more hands-on, more directed at local communities than necessarily sort of larger global international issues. Yeah, and so that brought me back to the Bay Area. My dad got sick also at that time, so I kind of moved back home to take care of him. Was working as a social worker in Contra Costa County. Got on RuPaul's Drag Race, and then somewhere along the lines, the stud was threatened with closure, and then there was a collective that formed, and I decided to join.
Do you have any like first time to go to the stud stories?
Well, I will say definitely remember.
I'm guessing you went at all.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
occasionally.
yeah.
No, but I think, I mean, my memories of the stud really start, I think, just even when my family would come downtown, because the stud was located right off the exit to the freeway, and you know, it's a pretty visible,
very visible
spot that it used to be at 9th and Harrison, and so I would always pass by it, and I'd sort of see the rainbow flag and be like, oh my gosh, like that's a space that is scary and interesting. Like, what goes on in there? If only I could find out what went on in there. And then, you know, 20 years down the line, I was working at Larkin Street Youth Services as an outreach counselor while I was going to UC Berkeley. And one of the spaces in which, actually I was working at that time as a residential counselor with Larkin Street, and one of the youth homes for foster youth that I worked at was basically down the street from the stud. So one day after work, I decided to hop in, and there was a friendly bartender named George who was there. And I think it was right after the T-Shack era had just ended, and there was a little party there called Pink Slip. And I saw this drag queen named Virginia Suicide who was there, and she was singing live, and she was hypnotic and incredible, and I looked at her and I was like, oh, I think that's what I want to do. So I just kept coming back.
So a similar feeling of home or your people or that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, from the first visit.
Yeah, pretty much from the first visit.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I had gotten to know Suppository Spelling around that same time, and she was throwing her party Cocktail Gate, and so she invited me to perform there. It was all like very like kind of all at once. Like once I started going to the stud, like all the connections started happening.
That was the Stud Collective's Honey Mahogany. Next week on the podcast, hear Honey, Rachel, and Marke B share all about the Stud's brand new location and what it took to get that spot opened. Part 2 drops next Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 6th season, we have more than 200 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're able to, please rate and review the show, and drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Keep rejecting those silly doom loop narratives about our city. Stay wacky, weird, healthy, and creative. And we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.